Hello.
Voilà.
Okay, so I think we're back.
Okay.
Okay, so apologies for that. I think for some reason Webinar Jam in their infinite wisdom kicked us off. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Do you want to start your presentation from the beginning?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
There we go.
All right. So, hey, I was saying that I just wanted to appreciate Seso for creating this platform. Okay, let me go talk about Haven Homes. Haven Homes has been in existence for 13 years now. We are known as the pioneers of contemporary styled homes in Nigeria. We have been developing homes off plan, whereby a payment plan is agreed between the purchaser and the developer. And this payment plan runs across the life cycle of the projects. We've been developing for different people from different walks of life, like celebrities, high net worth individuals, entrepreneurs, and many other people from different walks of life. When we deliver our properties to you, or the properties to you, when you purchase from us, you're pretty much getting a finished home that you move in. You can move in exactly that day. One of our core strengths is that we build on relationship, which is why people are able to continuously buy from us. So you have previous buyers buying year after year and year. I would like Phil to please go to the next slide that shows our previous developments. One of our very significant developments is our Richmond Gate Estate 123. Richmond Gate Estate is known as Celebrity Estate of Nigeria and is also known as one of the most secured estates in Lagos. It is fully occupied now and has made us to get another location where we are developing now. So you can show the other slide. So as you can see in this slide, this basically represents developments that we've done in the recent years, in the last few years. And I said earlier that we're known as contemporary styled homes, the contemporary styled home developers. So which is the type of properties that you can see on the screen. We've gone further to launch our new estate, which is called the Richmond Pearl Estate. It is located off Freedom Way by Lekki Phase 1, for those who are very conversant with Lekki, Lagos. But for those who aren't conversant with Lekki, Lagos, it is right at the center of Lekki, the very prime location, and is known as the frontier of Lagos right now. It's very close to the central business district of Lagos, which is Victoria Island. One of the things that's very unique about our Richmond Pearl Estate is that our Richmond Pearl Estate has 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms on 2 floors, which pretty much makes you feel like you're buying a home, like an apartment, but a home, as opposed to you're buying an apartment, but in the place of a home. Another very unique thing about Haven Homes is that we have personalized systems that allows us to supervise our clients' units individually and gives it personal touch. And this reason is because it allows us to control the quality of what we're delivering to our clients. So quality is like something that is very very important to us. What would typically happen with a normal development will be that the company will give it to a contracting firm, and a contracting firm will deliver the units, which may or may not have control over the quality of what is being delivered. But we've designed a personalized system, so it gives you that personal touch. One of the things that we've noticed over the years is that we've had significant increase in sales year after year, and we have significant increase in sales from our previous buyers, our new buyers, and also recently last year, that's 2019, we had a 30% increase in clients buying from the diaspora, from the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and so many other countries right now. Right now, we are also experiencing a very huge amount of calls coming from the diaspora, which is why that market is so important to us. In conclusion, I will just talk briefly about documentation. And before then, I would like Phil to just go over the current project, which is our Richmond Pearl. As you can see, this is our exciting new project, which is Richmond Pearl Estate. Richmond Pearl Estate promises to even be much interesting, and I would say even better than Richmond 1 Estate or Richmond 2 Estate that you probably know now. There you can see that we have an estate that's had multiple kinds of projects, which is like 5-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, as the case may, even a detached property. So it's a very interesting development that's, I'll love to get more feedback on if anyone may be interested in that. So, and then lastly, I would like to talk about the documentation. So documentation, it's pretty much, yeah. And this is our the slide here, it shows our what's going on site. We've hit the site. We're currently constructing. As you can see, our team are right there. The documentation side, I'll just explain a typical process of documentation, which will be very clear. Documentation process is such that the government of the land is able to give a certificate of occupancy to the original owners of the land, whereby where we as developers, we go to the original developer, the original owners of the land, to possibly buy from them, and they're able to give us a documentation called a deed of assignment to our name, whereby we process a consent which indicates that we're transferring valid title to us. Now, that valid title allows us to be able to give our clients documentation like deed of assignment, survey, and which happens right at the end of the transaction, or happens at the end of the project when all the payments, everything has been done. Now, the thing about documentation with us is that we've done this business for years, for 13 years now, and I can tell you that in the whole 13 years, we've never had anyone complain about documentation, because we have lawyers who we've put in place who understand documentation very well and are able to interpret it to the clients. So, and they're able to interact with our clients very well, our clients' lawyers. One of the advice we always tell our clients is that if you're buying from the diaspora, for example, it's very good for you to do your due diligence. I've recommended lawyers who are able to dissect the documentation matters in Nigeria or in wherever you want to buy, Lagos, Abuja, and are able to tell you, give you the green light before you go ahead, because it's something that's very, very important. And then lastly, for Haven Homes in specific, we are very cautious about documentation, because we do off-plan projects, and it's very important that whatever you're buying, the documentation process is intact, so you don't have any issues you don't have any issues along the line. And you can imagine doing off-plan, everything has to be very much intact for our buyers. So that's pretty much what what a documentation process is like, and that's all for my presentation now. So thank you, Phil.
Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. So, a real privilege to have speak to us two fantastic developers that are building really fantastic homes across the major conurbations in Nigeria, Abuja and in Lagos. But in order to build these properties, there was constant mention of the correct documentation, such as, for example, the certificate of occupancy. So at this point, I am delighted to pass over to Igwonu Shawawu from ACAS Law, Senior Counsel at ACAS Law, who can give us all a bit more of an insight into the buying process, the correct documentation that is required, etc. So, Igwonu, over to you.
Thank you, Philip, and thank you to the Seso team for the opportunity to take part in this webinar. Just before I'll start my presentation by giving some more information about my firm, ACAS Law. We're a fully integrated corporate and commercial law firm that has been in existence for the past 29 years. We provide a wide range of services to individuals and corporate clients, both in Nigeria and abroad. So now that Adrian and Ufoma have given us beautiful pictures about some of the properties that are available for acquisition in Nigeria, I would be talking about the typical legal transaction process that would occur in the event that a buyer wants to purchase property. Before I do that, as in line with the theme for the presentation for today's webinar, which is basically about solving the trust issue, it's recommended that any potential buyer would engage a trusted law firm that would assist them in the acquisition process. This is done to mitigate the risks associated with acquisition and also protect their interests. Philip, please, could you move to the next slide? Thank you. So, as I said earlier, I'll talk about the legal transaction process, and after that, I'll talk a little bit about the title documentation that have been mentioned by Adrian and Ufoma. So, typically, in a property transaction, when a lawyer is engaged, we would have to do due diligence. There are three main work streams. It could be due diligence, the transaction documentation, and perfection. For due diligence, it's typically the aim of this exercise is to confirm if there are any issues relating to the seller's title. It's also to confirm whether there are any encumbrances that exist on the property, and also to show to confirm whether the seller can transfer title to the buyer. In situations where property developers are corporate entities, there will be a need to conduct a search on the corporate entities records at the CAC. This is done to confirm that there are no security interests that have been registered on the company's assets, and also to confirm that it can validly transfer title to their directors and all. At the end of this task, it's typical that a search report would be issued to the buyer. Another aspect of the due diligence work stream is the investigation of title on the property. This is done to identify the seller, the nature of its interests in the property, to confirm the title that he has, the term of the grant, and also to confirm that there are no security interests that can hinder the purchase or negatively affect the acquisition. As with the previous work stream, a search report will be issued to the buyer that confirms the findings and would also advise whether the buyers will proceed with the acquisition. Another part of the due diligence exercise may involve a site visitation. This is done to check whether there have been any encroachments on the property. The next aspect of the transaction process is the transaction documentation stage. So this essentially covers structuring the dynamics of the transaction, payment terms, and other relevant terms. It also involves drafting of the transaction agreement, reviewing them, and negotiating them with the seller's counsel. These transaction documents could range from contracts of sale, deed of assignments, powers of attorneys, and escrow agreements where they exist. Once these documents have been agreed upon, once the form and the terms of these documents have been agreed upon, the parties would execute the documents and would typically, and then the lawyer would proceed to coordinate the fulfillment of any conditions precedent to the acquisition. And this would also, and this is done so that parties can close the transaction and the buyer can know that he has paid monies for the actual property that he wishes to buy. After this, at the end of this process, we have what is called the perfection process. Perfection in this instance relates to the registration of title, obtaining governor's consent, stamping of the documentation, and then registering it in the relevant lands registry. All of this is done is geared towards protecting the buyer's interests. Now, at the point where we get to perfection, I must mention here that buyers should note that there are cost implications attached to perfecting and registering their title. These costs range from consent fees, taxes, stamp duties, and registration fees. I should mention also that perfection in itself the aim of the perfection workstream is to validate the acquisition of the interest in the property. And it's critical to the acquisition process, especially for persons living in the diaspora. Philip, please, could you move to the next slide? Okay. We had Adrian and Ufoma had mentioned some title documentations that they have in respect of their various properties. One of such title documentation is the certificate of occupancy, which is also called the CFO in Nigeria. This documentation is essentially a document that is issued by the relevant lands registry that is issued by a government authority that confirms the interest of the holder of the register of the certificate of occupancy. I should also mention that sometimes some developers may not necessarily have a certificate of occupancy. Sometimes developers could have something that's called a deed of assignment, a registered deed of assignment. As Ufoma had hinted previously, this occurs where a previous owner of the property had acquired property and had registered his interest and had acquired a CFO, and a subsequent developer acquires property from him via the deed of assignment. Such deeds of assignments are usually registered in the relevant lands registry, and they also confer valid title interest in the property, barring any other issues that may occur during the due diligence process. Apart from these two, there are other documents that could evidence title. This could range from long-term deeds of sublease to, in some instances, the wills of persons who have passed on and the properties have been passed on to their beneficiaries, to the beneficiaries of their estate. So that's it from my end. That's it from my end.
Okay.
I think at this point we should take questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, panelists, many thanks for that. So really appreciated. We've had a sort of an extensive view as to what's being built and an overview of the legal process. What I would also ask the individuals listening, please do pass on any questions that you have. And I know that we dropped off a little bit, so we can now overrun a little bit, actually past 4 o'clock, if anyone has any questions. I do have a couple of questions from Mrs. Olisa about the power supply in the estates. So I ask Adrian and about the situation in relation to your power supplies, but also amenities in general, for example, roads and the like.
example, oh, okay, who's going first?
Ufoma, do you want to go first?
Yes, please. Okay, so for our developments, for example, we do a strictly 24 hours power supply estate. The Richmond one, Gates Estate one I mentioned earlier is almost 7 years now, and it's been running on 24 hours power supply. Also, the roads are done, the drainage are good in the area. So also Richmond 2 estate, we've even gone further to do centralized systems like central sewage, central water, central power. So I mean, pretty much developments, if buying a development from Richmond Gates, is you're essentially having a very, very, very secured environment, clean environment. Everywhere is pretty much flawless, basically.
Okay, fantastic. Now I think Adrian is actually on mute. Adrian, could you come off mute? Adrian's on mute, so unfortunately we can't get an answer.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you go. You're back. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I live on the estate, and I've been living here for 7 years. So we have a direct connection with NEPA. We put in all the transformers. For my own home, I also have a generator. So our supply has been good, and in terms of roads, I built all the roads with my team. Some of the roads are dual carriageway, as you can see. I also decided to do underground drainage, and I put in kilometers of underground drainage because it's cleaner. And from that point of view, our infrastructure, especially where I'm selling the 200 homes, is 100% complete.
Okay, fantastic. Could we also talk about the buy and build? So how that is structured? I know that we showed the slides earlier on, and then once we've spoken about that, could we then talk about how, from a legal perspective, we can shore up that buy and build? So essentially, buyers are able to transfer money when particular stages of the property has been built. So,
okay. So what it is that you buy into the land with plans that have already been pre-approved for building with the FCDA here. And we will give you, because this is a difficult time, so some people want to make the investment because prices are relatively low now, especially if you're in the diaspora, the exchange rate is good and the prices are low, but they don't want to be rushed to build. So we're giving you up to 18 months to build, or we could build for you. We will send you a plan and a costing. You can compare it with building yourself. Over that period of time, we will have milestones. You will pay for the land, but for example, we will build, if you agree for us to build, we'll build your foundation. And then once we've built the foundation and you've seen it, or you've seen it by Google, you'll pay for it. Then we will go to the first level, then we'll go to roofing, and after each stage that we show you, demonstrate to you that we've built it and you're happy with it, then you pay. We're not going to actually use your money to build. After 18 months, if you've not built and you feel as if you want your cash back for whatever reason, cash back, we guarantee to give you back the cost. So you're not going to lose on a gamble. We're not trying to bring you in and you're going to buy the land. We believe the land price is going to go up, but even if it doesn't, we'll give you back the cost of what you paid. And so it's trying to instill some trust into members of the diaspora. I've experienced it myself before I came to Nigeria, and why we build first and then you pay after is to give some trust back. What do you think, Phil?
Fantastic. That's awesome. And I suppose one of the issues that that comes up for us a lot is where Adriano, it would be great to get your insights on this. Is what security can the correct legal structure provide prospective buyers when they're buying in the particular stages that Adriano has sort of set out in terms of, let's say, the foundations and the start of the building, for example.
Okay, thanks, Philip. So in these kind of situations where a buyer would be acquiring land and over time the property will be built, it's typical that in the contracts for the transaction, the contract of sale, that we would put in payment mechanisms that protect the buyer's interest. These will be aligned with the agreed milestones. So, for example, when Adriano Properties gets to the foundational stage, we would be putting terms in the agreement that empower the buyer to instruct his bank. In the case, let's use the FCMB scenario that Adrian had mentioned, to instruct his bank to pay Adriano the agreed sum for that stage of the work, and it would go along those lines. Then we would also, it would be recommended that there are default provisions that are put in the agreement in the event that the developer can't meet those targets. So where that's the case, and that's where an escrow arrangement is also very useful, where parties are unable, where the developer doesn't reach the milestones, then the agreement will state clearly what happens, and it would state clearly that the buyer would be entitled to receive the monies he has put in the account and it will be paid back to him. Also, another thing that's important and should also be reflected in the contracts would be relevant warranties and indemnities. So even the guarantee to ensure that if for some reason the property is not developed up to the agreed stage, then Adriano would probably be giving some kinds of securities as well. I should, so even in these times where there's a lot of uncertainty, I've seen transactions where people still buy off plan, and we've put in terms that would protect the buyer in the event that there is a lack in the delivery of the finished property, or for some reason the project never even kicks off due to the COVID-19, for example.
Yeah, okay. I mean, look, we've got an interesting question about COVID, but we've just had another question come in about solar systems. So, Haven and Adriano, do you have a solar system in your property, or that option for your investors? So as opposed to going through a GEN or NEPA, would the solar system be available? Adrian, do you want to answer that first?
Yeah, we give that as an option. We are so for the homes here, you will actually see, and including my home, most of the time I'm running on solar, and the rest of the time I'm running on GEN, and then I use NEPA only. You know, I don't. It's 24 hours because I need 24-hour electricity. So because of that, I do that. We are looking at other schemes with larger organizations to try and get down the cost from an economies of scale, the solar. Those projects are ongoing, but right now, for each household, they're allowed to access solar facilities in order to ensure, as I want 24-hour electricity. So that's what I have, and yes, many others do the same.
And if I may come in here, those add-on services, typically, I'm assuming, Adrian, and you might correct me, there would be a separate facility management agreement that would be signed with your management company. So in that situation, the rights to assess the solar electrical services would be duly provided, and even where possible, give the owner of the property options to install other renewable energy sources of renewable energy in their building.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So
it's true.
Okay.
Go, carry on.
Okay, so for Haven Homes, the Richmond Gate Estate 1, what we've done is we have a NEPA generator and also have gas. So there are 3 sources of power trying to provide us 24 hours power supply. However, some still feel the need to put solar systems, and which is typically allowed in the estate. And currently, as a company, we've also gone further to start the development with the German company. It's a fully solar project because we're moving into the sustainability energy systems. So that's what we're also looking at now. So we have projects where we've commenced and started with a German company for solar systems as well.
Okay, fantastic. We've had another question about the, obviously it is the topical issue of the day, which is COVID. What experience or what experiences of holdups currently exist because of COVID? For example, land registries being closed. But Adriano, could you shed a little bit more light on that?
Oh, yes, I can. So during this period, there are about a couple of transactions we've worked on. Some had started and got into a significant part before the restrictions were in place, before the lockdown. So in one instance, we were not able to go and have physical execution of documents. So what we had to do was come up with a way, and both parties had to collaborate and work together to achieve closing of the transaction. So we had to exchange documentation online, use electronic signatures, and sign those documentations. Now, in order to do that, the terms had to be watertight from the perspective of the buyer. So that was done, and then what we then said, put in terms to say, if for some reason parties are unable to, there's some defect in the property that's discovered, then the buyer would be able to recover his money back. That was in one particular instance. In that instance, we weren't even able to do a title search, but the client was willing to buy the property. So what we agreed was they would make a deposit, a significant deposit, in order to tie the price down. However, we also put terms that if for some reason, when the land registries are opened and we find out there's some defect in the property, he would be entitled, the buyer would be entitled to his money back and get some value for the time lost in his investment. So essentially, I think
we're having.
Hello.
Yeah, I think that we're having slight connection issues, Adriano.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, not at all. It's.
Do you want me to repeat the answer?
Yeah, if you could repeat, that would be great. Yeah.
Okay. So I said that during this lockdown period, we've been involved in a couple of transactions, property transactions. One of them had started before the lockdown was imposed. So we had to we had made some progress with the transaction documentation. Due diligence had been done, luckily. So at least the developer's title had been confirmed. So what we did with the collaboration of the buyer and the seller and their counsel was to come up with a way to sign these documents offline, not physically, and get that done. And then also to put terms to ensure that if for some reason certain things happen and there's a delay in the completion of the property or handover of the property, then the buyer would be able to get some kind of refund of his money. Another transaction we've seen, another set of transactions that we've seen are where buyers are willing to close out on the price because of the dip and the decline in the economy. And so they are willing to take the risk. So what we do is put terms in the agreement that says, because we were not able to confirm title of the developer, we were able to say, if for some reason that title is defective, it's discovered the title is defective, the buyer would be entitled to get a refund of his money, of all the monies that he had paid. So that was done. And also we've had to put terms to say, for some.
I think we're having a bit of trouble. Adrian,
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, I think we lost you just towards the end there, but we got most of it. So
sorry about that. I can hear you.
Oh, no problem. It's connection issues. everybody. Guano's coming in, calling in from Nigeria, and sometimes the connection over here can't be found. Isn't sometimes great. Adrian, could you also just very quickly talk about the setting up of escrow accounts? Because I know that we.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Previously spoken about escrow accounts is basically a way for members of the diaspora. Yeah, we can.
Good.
Adrian?
Yes, I can hear. So one of the things that we're exploring with CMB UK is the use of an escrow account. Basically, they did due diligence on us. They have our account, our main account. Where our customers are coming in, they are putting their money into account and then issuing instructions based on milestones as to how they will release the monies into our account. We are very happy with that, and we'd like to work even more so with Seso in making more of those arrangements. Can everyone else hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, good.
I think Philip dropped off.
Okay, Philip, you're back, yes?
Okay, I think that's it. If there's no more questions coming in,
In the interests of, I hope everyone can hear me. That was Daniel. I think we are having some internet gremlins, I'm afraid. So what we'll do is we'll sign off on the webinar now. Thank you everybody for joining. What we will do is we'll follow up with everyone via email, because we have put together a sort of a buyer's guide from a legal perspective on how to essentially navigate through the buying process. So we can circulate that to everyone. But on behalf of Seso, Dr. Ogun, Aguano, and Ufuma, thank you so much for joining us today. A really
Thank you very much. It's a privilege.
Really informative session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Once again, attendees, thank you so much for joining. A couple of
thank you, attendees,
but we got through it.
Thank you to all that attended, and thank you to my fellow presenters. And thank you, Philip and Daniel.
Thank you, Dr. Ogun.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.